should withdraw his comments made yesterday during question period. If he is not willing to do so, the chair will not recognize him for the remainder of today's sitting.
There's one version of the rules for Justin Trudeau and a different version of the rules for Pierre Poilievre.
Greg Fergus announced this afternoon that Pierre Poilievre was banned from speaking in question period today. The Conservative Party was quick to pounce on this with calls of partisanship against the Speaker. But the real question is, are those calls justified?
We took a deep dive on this one, so let's take a look.
Something wild just happened in Parliament, and you're not going to hear it on the mainstream media. This just happened moments ago in the House of Commons. Okay, so yesterday, Pierre Poilievre was holding Justin Trudeau and his ministers to account for their lack of action on stopping the lawless mobs that we're seeing across Canadian streets. Yesterday, you've probably seen this on social media before, people burning Canadian flags, ripping Canadian flags, and saying things like death to Canada, just the worst of the worst possible things. Yesterday, Pierre Poilievre was saying, he was asking Justin Trudeau and his foreign affairs minister what he was going to do about this, right? He was asking the government this. Moments ago in the House of Commons, the Speaker of the House of Commons, who is a Liberal member of Parliament, just banned Pierre Poilievre from asking questions in the House. I couldn't believe it myself. I was just watching it on TV, and I was in the middle of writing something, and I was like, this can't be for real. And I had to watch it. The Speaker of the House of Commons, remember, this is the guy who's been accused of all sorts of unethical behavior. He's been accused of partisanship. He was the guy who made an announcement for the Liberal Party of Ontario conference, I think, wearing his speaker robe. He went abroad and he was talking about being a Liberal in a formal setting. Like this guy has had to go before parliamentary committees to explain his behavior, and he just banned the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, from asking Justin Trudeau questions in the House of Commons. Now, here's the other thing. Here's the kicker. Justin Trudeau has had a lot worse behavior, or whatever he's claiming happened, than Pierre Poilievre has. There's only one reason in my mind why the Speaker of the House of Commons would ban the leader of the opposition from doing his exact job. What is Pierre Poilievre's job? It's to do what? It's to hold the government to account on your behalf. And the Speaker of the House of Commons just said, sorry, no, not today. You can't ask questions. Can you imagine that? This is Canada. We're supposed to have a democracy where I'm supposed to be able to represent 120,000 people. What's next? Is he just going to ban me from speaking in the House of Commons too?
Okay. So this, I think, is kind of what got everyone rolling on this.
Yeah.
Now, we told you we were going to be committed to the truth, and it doesn't matter the party. There are so many things that Michelle Rempel-Garner here is omitting. Is Greg Fergus a member of Parliament for the Liberals? Yep. Has he done partisan activity in the past? Yep. Was he called to account on that? Yep. Do we think he should still be Speaker? No.
No, based on all the previous stuff.
Right.
But today, we think he was actually doing his job correctly.
Well, and here's the other thing. What she doesn't say is something very, very important, is that she makes it seem like Greg Fergus has banned Pierre from asking questions in the House forever.
Indefinitely.
But that isn't true.
No, it was just for today, which is October the 8th.
So this is some sensationalism here by Michelle Rempel-Garner and the Conservatives. And we can say and the Conservatives because we also received an email from the Conservative Party literally about this, that, you know, they banned Pierre from speaking in the House of Commons. So before we get into our opinion on this, we're going to take you through the different pieces and how this all fits together. So the first thing that we're going to show you is what Pierre said yesterday that caused such outrage.
I gave the Foreign Affairs Minister 2 opportunities to condemn the increasingly common and terrifying anti-Semitic chants we hear in the streets, Israel will soon be gone. There is only one solution, intifada, revolution. Twice she refused to condemn those remarks. She continues to pander to Hamas supporters in the Liberal Party as part of her leadership campaign rather than doing her job.
That last part is what people are allegedly upset about.
That she was pandering to Hamas and terrorist groups, essentially.
Yeah, so that's what the problem is. Now, people may say, well, she is. And
true, but you're not allowed to say it in the house.
And I don't disagree that she is.
It's just like how you're not allowed to call someone a liar in the house. They may very well be a liar, but the rules of decorum in the Green Book say that you're not allowed to call them a liar.
So let's now go to Fergus's ruling that he made at around 12:30 p.m. today.
Indicated that during question period, the Leader of the Opposition had used language directed at the Minister of Foreign Affairs that was deemed to be unparliamentary. In fact, it was very similar in nature and language used earlier this year by a member who accused the Leader of the Opposition of pandering to an odious regime. At the time, that member was asked to withdraw that comment. I therefore asked yesterday that the Leader of Opposition do the same, namely to withdraw his comment at the earliest opportunity. To date, this has not happened. We will soon find ourselves at the time of day where the Leader of the Opposition normally undertakes one of his most important roles, namely leading off question period. Members will recall that when the Leader of the Opposition was himself the subject of unparliamentary language, to which I just referred, members of his caucus took great offense and made that perfectly clear to the chair occupant, who then very rightly insisted on a withdrawal. As such, I am sure members can appreciate that I must do the same in the present circumstances. Notre régime parlementaire repose.
Our parliamentary system depends on respect for the rules that members set out for themselves, and the application of which has been entrusted to the Speaker and other chair occupants. Ignoring the authority of the chair, who is in charge of enforcing parliamentary rules, has a corrosive effect on our discussions. I would call on all members, and especially the leaders of the different parties represented in the House, to reflect on this. These situations only tarnish the reputation of the House and its members in the eyes of the public. This undermines the important work done by the House.
Opposition is an experienced member who is well versed in our practices and procedures. He knows that in our system, the role of the Leader of the Opposition is to ask questions to the Ministry, to ensure it is held accountable for its actions, and to challenge its decisions. His role is not to make the government comfortable, quite the contrary, but his actions must also be exercised within the existing boundaries of parliamentary decorum.
Over the last few months, the member refused to heed decisions by the chair on non-parliamentary remarks during question periods on 2 occasions. In the first occasion, he was named. On the second occasion, his party had questions removed. Yesterday's events represent a third occasion.
The opposition should withdraw his comments made yesterday during question period. If he is not willing to do so, the chair will not recognize him for the remainder of today's sitting.
There you go. So it wasn't just question period on November 8th that Pierre had to sit out. It was the remainder of the day, which usually goes until 6 p.m.
So we're going to get into some of this, but let's just keep following this along. Now, this is where we kind of had to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, because he didn't actually talk about when his comparative was actually made. So we were going through our normal process of research, and it was interesting because we found some things that Trudeau said, which we'll show you later, that were very close to this, but that's not what Greg Fergus was actually referring to. He was referring to something that actually happened on March 20th of 2024, where a Liberal was making some comments, and Conservative Speaker or Deputy Speaker Chris D'Entremont was actually presiding over the House. Let's take a listen.
What's happened to the Conservative Party of Brian Mulroney or John Diefenbaker? What's happened to that party? Well, let me say, in summary, there's a far-right movement in Canada, just like there is in the U.S., that's taken over the Republican Party, that believes the pro-Putin propaganda and doesn't support Ukraine. There's a Putin wing in the Conservative Party, and the leader of the Conservative Party is seeking to earn their support. The Putin wing has taken over the Conservative Party. The second thing that's happened is he's trying to consolidate the PPC vote, and the PPC has always been pro-Putin and anti-Ukraine. So he's pandering to the PPC vote, and he's given in to his Putin wing of the Conservative Party. That's what's happened with the Conservative Party. We need to make sure we stand with Ukraine until it wins, and for that to happen, that party, that Conservative Party, and specifically that leader needs to step up and start voting in favor of Ukraine, and he needs to make sure his members need to step up and make sure they start voting for Ukraine. That's how we're going to make sure Ukraine wins. That's how we're going to make sure we all win. Thank you, Speaker. Slava Ukraini.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know what's absolutely disgraceful? That member there sitting here spewing mistruths in this chamber and sowing disinformation. But frankly, I don't expect anything different from that member. Frankly, what Ukraine needs right now is light armored vehicles. What they need right now is rockets. What they need right now.
From the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, all members are honourable members in the chamber, and I think many of the words that she was using were borderline unparliamentary. And I just suggest, yes, I did hear what the member opposite said, and I've also been listening in terms of what his colleague.
Okay, no, we'll just take a break here.
So, almost the same like phrase when you're talking about somebody pandering, but even that I would say was a little bit worse. Basically, saying the whole Conservative Party has essentially been taken over by the Putin wing.
Right, but that specifically Pierre Poilievre was pandering to the Putin wing, whatever that happens to be.
Russian propaganda, whatever it is.
Yeah, anti-Ukraine sentiments, etc., etc., etc. So I think that's where the issue lies, because as we'll get into in the Green Book, they generally are a little bit more forgiving when you're talking about the party as a whole or even the opposition as a whole versus one individual member of the House.
Right. Now, the other interesting thing here is Kevin Lamoureux, like he does, he stands up and is like, "Whoa, you're saying things that are untrue. Oh, well, that's unparliamentary language," and that's where the Conservatives are like, I think it was Janice. Did you hear what he said? Yes, I heard what he said. So there's a lot of back and forth here. So let's see how this kind of concluded.
Continue to finish this one off. Is that when someone in this House is saying that someone is standing with Putin, I would suggest that's probably a little too far on that edge, as the Speaker has ruled in this House. So the honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
On this point of order, Mr. Speaker. So I think if you check the Hansard, what you will find is that what I said, I did not speak about the individual members. I said that there's a pro-Putin wing in the Conservative Party. There's a Putin wing in the Conservative Party, and that is not.
I think that's exactly what that's being brought up here. We're saying exactly the same thing about the NDP. Exactly. You have to apologize. I know the microphone's not on that, but the member for Miramichi Grand Lake was asked to apologize for saying something very, very, very similar. I think it was to the honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona in that particular case. So I would just suggest that the honourable member should maybe retract that. And apologize for it, and then we can go on and ask the questions, because the list of speakers is very, very short tonight, so I know that the staff at some point would like to get home. The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Speaker, what I spoke was fact. What I spoke was not in breach of the Speaker's ruling.
All right. I've asked you to retract it, so please retract it and apologize, or your evening is going to come to an end. The honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
I will not apologize for speaking the truth.
Wait, we'll make this easy. That the honourable member won't be recognized until he does apologize, because it just it solves a couple of the problems, and we'll go on to the next speaker.
Now, this was at about 10:30 at night on March the 20th. Normally, the House sits until 6 p.m. Sometimes it does run late, though, so obviously this is a very late sitting. Almost nobody's in the House, and I have a feeling that the reason that Don Tremont didn't kick Baker out of the House, why he wasn't named and removed, was because they wouldn't have no longer had quorum.
Right. So if they didn't have quorum, then debate couldn't continue and they wouldn't have been able to actually conclude business for the day.
So that's why the Speaker said, we're just not going to recognize you, and that will solve some other issues. So
right.
Quorum most likely is that issue, and quorum is where they need a minimum of 20 members in the House. Now,
the very interesting thing is about an hour after Greg Fergus gave his ruling today, he did something else. Let's take a look.
Before resuming debate, the chair would now like to return to the events from March 20th, 2024. The member for Etobicoke Centre had used language that was deemed unparliamentary by the chair. The member was asked to withdraw his comments and apologize. He refused to do so, and as such has not been recognized by the chair since then.
From earlier today, including sanctions imposed on another member for similar comments. The chair is now ready to move on and allow the member for Etobicoke Centre to again participate in debate as of tomorrow, October 9th, 2024.
Now that I find curious, because he's talking about Baker, who we saw in the previous clip, for the infraction that we saw in the previous clip, March 20th, 2024.
And that was the same infraction that Fergus is using as justification for
banning Pierre for the day.
Banning Pierre for the day. Now, Fergus isn't saying that Baker apologized. What he's saying is the Speaker is now ready to move on.
Which I find curious. I wasn't able to find whether there's like a set number of days if the member refuses to apologize, like how long they have to sit out. But I just think it's very bizarre that the day that Speaker Fergus takes Pierre out of the House for doing the exact same thing, that Baker is like reinstated.
So let's see what the Green Book actually says, and then we will give you our opinion.
So this segment that I'm going to read comes from pages 623 all the way to 625 in the Green Book, under the section entitled Unparliamentary Language. I'm not going to read the whole thing in its entirety, but I am going to read the important parts. So it says, the proceedings of the House are based on a long-standing tradition of respect for the integrity of all members. Thus, the use of offensive, provocative, or threatening language in the House is strictly forbidden. Personal attacks, insults, and obscenities are not in order. A direct charge or accusation against a member may be made only by way of a substantive motion for which notice is required. So basically, if somebody says something bad about you during debate, you have to bring up a point of order, or one of your caucus mates has to bring up a point of order. Points of order may not be raised during members' statements or question period. However, the Speaker may address a matter of unparliamentary language at once if he or she believes the matter to be sufficiently serious to merit immediate attention. Also, a member does not have to raise a point of order. If the Speaker hears it for themselves, they're allowed to intervene. If the Speaker did not hear the word or words in question, or if there is a dispute as to what words were actually used, the chair may set the matter aside pending a review of the record and, if necessary, return to the House at a later time with a ruling. The Speaker has also ruled that if the chair did not hear the offensive words or phrase, and if the offensive language was not recorded in the debates, the chair cannot be expected to rule in the absence of a reliable record. So pretty much if the chair doesn't hear it, if it's not in Hansard, or if it's not in Hansard Blues, then the chair can't rule on it because there's no evidence of it happening. In dealing with unparliamentary language, the Speaker takes into account the tone, manner, and intention of the member speaking, the person to whom the words at issue were directed, the degree of provocation, and most important, whether or not the remarks created disorder in the chamber. That part's important, so please keep it in mind. Thus, language deemed unparliamentary one day may not necessarily be deemed unparliamentary on another day. That's also important. Should the Speaker find the utterances of a particular member offensive or disorderly, that member will be requested to rise in his or her place and withdraw the unparliamentary word or phrase unequivocally. The member's apology is accepted in good faith, and the matter is then considered closed. However, if the member refuses to obey the directive of the Speaker to retract his or her words, the Chair may refuse to recognize the member until the words have been withdrawn, or may name the member for disregarding the authority of the Chair and order the member to withdraw from the chamber for the remainder of the sitting, which is exactly what happened to Pierre today.
So what does all of that mean? So it means that if somebody is launching personal attacks, if they're trying to impugn the character of somebody, then by the Green Book, the Speaker is justified to essentially ask that person to rise, state that how they broke the rules in which they used unparliamentary language, and require them to withdraw the comment. They may also instruct them to apologize. If the member refuses to do that, the Speaker can, either give them another chance, or by their own judgment, they can, make a judgment right away and then name them. What does naming mean? So you'll hear the Speaker refer to everybody in the House by essentially their title of their riding. So the honourable member for Carleton, or the honourable member for, Brantford Brant.
The honourable finance minister,
Yeah.
etc. But they never say, Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah. So the only time that the Speaker will actually say the name of somebody is, something that they would never want to happen. What that means is if they say their name, they are now named and they're required to leave the House of Commons. So that's what being named actually means. And then, they can put different punishments on them. Like D'Entremont said to the gentleman, you will not be recognized until you apologize. Well, there wasn't a time limit on his judgment. So that was in March and we're in October. So here you go. Now, here's the thing. On April 30th, Justin Trudeau made similar comments to Pierre Poilievre. Take a listen to this.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Still won't condemn these groups. Any leader that needs the support of a far-right white nationalist group to fundraise and get closer to power does not deserve elected office. This is a 19-year career politician who knows exactly what he's doing and thinks he can get away with it. It was a choice to pander to white nationalists, not an accident. And it is a choice to continue to not condemn them and condemn everything they stand for in his quest for votes.
So, Justin Trudeau is essentially saying the same thing that both Pierre Poilievre and Mr. Baker said on March 20th. So, the issue here is consistency. It's all well and good for Greg Fergus to point to Chris D'Entremont and say, see, that's an occasion where somebody impugned the character of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, and I'm just referencing that same thing and saying the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Pierre Poilievre, basically did the exact same thing in this case when he was trying to impugn the character of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Joly. The problem is that Trudeau has done this on a number of occasions and the Speaker hasn't done diddly squat.
Well, if we go back to the Green Book, it says, the language deemed unparliamentary one day may not necessarily be deemed unparliamentary on another day. And I think one of the metrics that they use to determine how bad this language is how badly does it upset the House? Does it upset the proceedings of the House? Does it upset the members? Does it interrupt their work?
Right. So obviously the Conservatives take issue when the Liberals are saying your entire party has been infiltrated by essentially the Putin propaganda and you're just a wing of Vladimir Putin. Yeah, that's probably going to bother them. But when they, just use this crass language like, oh, you're pandering to white nationalists, the Conservatives seem to just let it roll off their back and move along.
Well, another thing is that you can't call a point of order during question period. So if it did upset the House enough,
You can't dispute it.
well, not only that, but if the speaker doesn't do anything about it during question period and nobody brings it up immediately after question period, the limitations are kind of done. Like it's done and over with. If nobody's raising a point of order to the speaker just lets it ride, I guess.
So should the speaker have called out Justin Trudeau if he's going to call out Pierre Poilievre? According to the Green Book, doesn't matter. But if you're looking to be a nonpartisan speaker, yeah, you should. You absolutely should.
If he didn't stop question period and make Justin Trudeau retract that statement during question period, then he should have done it immediately after. But to our knowledge, it wasn't done.
Right. Just as when he was telling Justin Trudeau to take back his comment about homophobia, Trudeau didn't. He apologized for something else. And the speaker was just like, okay, I'm just going to take that because I don't want to name my boss and have him ticked at me later. So, but when it comes back to the Conservatives, according to precedent and according to, let's just, say Chris D'Entremont on his previous ruling, was Pierre using unparliamentary language? Sure, you can make the argument. You can make the argument that he was. So the sensationalism that is being used by the Conservative Party right now, is it justified in the fact that Pierre didn't break the rules? No, it is not justified at all.
Well, what I think is happening right now is that the Conservatives are using this to their advantage, because getting kicked out for one day or getting not recognized for one day in the House and having on record that you've called the foreign minister pandering to Hamas, not apologizing for that, standing your ground, losing one day of question period or debate, and then getting to go back the next day, I personally would consider that a win, because now it's on the record that you've called the the foreign affairs minister like in bed with Hamas, essentially.
Well, and here's the other thing. So Pierre has refused to follow the speaker's instructions 3 times now, and the speaker even said that, which is why he's doing what he's doing. That should send a larger message that Pierre does not respect the speaker because he's not nonpartisan. And this is the whole issue with what has been going on all the way back to October of last year. Remember, Fergus has only been around for a year, or you can say, wow, he's been around that long.
I thought it was February, was it?
No, this all happened last October.
Wow.
All last October. So anyway, so what are the Conservatives doing then? They're playing chess. You can say that, well, they're technically in the wrong according to the rules. Yeah, they are, but they're also playing chess. So what are they doing? Well, right now they are trying to essentially call Fergus's partisanship into question once again, because one thing they are correct on is Fergus is not consistent in his application of the rules. There's one version of the rules for Justin Trudeau and a different version of the rules for Pierre Poilievre. That has been demonstrably true.
Well, and the House is already in disarray, so why not bring a little more disarray into it?
Well, and this is just, I think, it's adding to their case that they're making, that they are trying to prove both to the Canadian people and to the other opposition parties that the government is in a complete shambles right now. There is no confidence in the government. There is no confidence in Trudeau, and now there is no confidence in the speaker. So this is just coming together on the case that they're building here and trying to take down this government. So although the Conservatives are technically wrong in terms of their application of the rules and they're being overly sensationalist about it, this is the chess game that they're playing. So this is our analysis here. Again, you don't have to take our word for it. It's in the rule book, literally the rule book of Parliament. And we've seen an example where a Conservative speaker has applied almost the same rule to a Liberal member. So if you took Greg Fergus out of it and it was D'Entremont applying that rule to Pierre Poilievre in this case, it would be justified because it would be consistent. So, there's a lot of gray area here. So you're going to hear a lot from probably a whole bunch of other people on social media about how, oh my God, this is crazy. Well, this is the whole story, folks, and that's what we are committed to give you. It's the facts, and we will call them out, even if they go against the Conservatives, even if they go for the Liberals. But Greg Fergus's biggest problem here is, although he's right in this decision, the problem is he hasn't been consistent.
Right, and that's the problem. He hasn't followed the rule of the Green Book to a T. And now the Conservatives are using that against him because he has not been applying the rules consistently.
And that has been very recent. So it will be interesting to see how this continues to play out. Interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Is the speaker going to rule again that Pierre can't speak? And then you will start to hear calls from the Conservatives about liberal censorship and all of this. And it sounds like they've been chatting with the Bloc behind the scenes, and they are going to be ratcheting up the heat very, very quickly on this government. It seems like the Conservatives are now pushing all of their chips into the center and going all in. The question is are the Liberals going to fold, or is their hand going to be a bust?